Going live. All right, cool. So I'm going to start in a couple of minutes. Today I'm going to talk about, I'm going to show you guys what I'm practicing. I'm preparing for a live stream concert next week. I will leave a link in the description after this. So you want to check that out. If you're coming to watch this, come and say hello. I've got the chat open so I can see you guys there. But today I've got some really cool tricks that I'm going to show you guys, just teaching you how I practice parts of the Grand Russian Fantasia. Really cool piece. It's one of my favorites. It's also really technically demanding, so it requires some really fast fingers, some fast tonguing, all sorts of cool stuff. But so, all right. Cool. So if you're in the chat here, say good day. I've got the chat open so I can see you guys and I can say hello and answer any questions. But we're going to get started really soon. Today we're talking about Grand Russian Fantasia. It's a fantastic piece. I'm going to be performing this for my live stream next week. So at this time next week, so wherever you are in the world, whatever the time is, whatever the day is, next week I will be performing live for you guys right here on YouTube. You can also find it on Facebook as well. If you've got any questions, I've got the chat open, so feel free to say hello. Today we're going to be focusing on Grand Russian Fantasia, one of my favorite pieces of music, and we're going to be talking about the variation number 2, which requires some really fast valves. Alright, let's get started. Enough about the saying good day. So if you're here, say good day in the chat. I have the chat window open and I can see all of your comments, and I will get to you and I will answer any questions you have. Now the first thing that we need to think about here, we're talking about Grand Russian Fantasia. If you don't have a copy of it, I'll see if I can find it, but I'm not sure if it's in print anymore, the version that I'm using, but it's written by Jules Levy. Fantastic theme and variations type solo. It's one of my favorites to play and I use it quite often. If you're in the chat or if you're watching live, say good day. I've got the chat open so I can see you here. Can you guys hear me okay? Alright, so variation 2. We need very fast valves for this one here, okay? Now, the first thing that we need to actually think about when we're playing with fast valves is we need to make sure that we use good valve technique and good valve oil. So I've already lubed up. I use Hetman's slide number 1. Okay, this is the one that I like to use. I should have turned face recognition off my camera. Sorry about that, guys. It's a good little lesson for me to learn before I go to the actual live stream and remember which settings I've left on and which ones I've forgotten to turn off. If I fix it by doing this. Alright. Nah, that's not fixing it. Let me turn that off. Alright, cool. So, sorry about that. Alright, hearing okay. Cool. Alright, sweet. So, I'm also testing out a new microphone. So, sorry about the square if you guys are getting that. It's just detecting my face. Good to know it's detecting my face. So, I use Hetman's valve oil. I use the light one because I'm going to perform this this piece on my cornet. This is the Stomvy Titan cornet. It's a brand new cornet for me, so I'm still wearing the valves in. So it's, yeah, got a bit of work to be done, but it's really important. That's why I use number 1. If you've got an older horn, you might want to check out lubricant number 2, so slightly thicker if you've got an older horn. But most of my horns are pretty new. They've all been bought in the last, well, the ones that I play most of the time, they've all been bought in the last couple of years. So, yeah. Anyway, so first thing, you got to get your valves working. So you got. Oh, let me turn the. Sorry, air conditioner makes a bit of background noise. So you got to make sure that the valves oil. You got to get the valves oiled, right? Next, you got to make sure that you actually use correct valve technique. Now, this isn't just when you're trying to play with fast valves. You actually need to do this all the time. If you get lazy and play flat-fingered, or you put your thumb up here every now and then, or you play the way that, you know, we're not taught to initially, there's a reason why we get taught it when we begin. There's a reason we have our fingers up on the top like this. You know, I teach my beginners like you're holding a cup of water, can of Coke, whatever you want to call it. It just sits on the top, right? I put the flat part of my fingers on top of the valves. That's important to do because you actually wear your valves out. If I open a valve up, and I can show you, if it'll appear on the camera, you can actually see, no, maybe not, but there are little valve wear marks And that's all determined by how you push your valves down consistently. So that's really important that you make sure that you're always pushing your valves down correctly. All right. The last thing that you got to think about as well is you got to start slow, and you got to keep the air moving forwards. The air has to be flowing through the trumpet. If you're not blowing through consistent airstream, then the valves just aren't going to be fast either. All right, let's see how I go. I'll have a bit of a read through this. That is how this movement goes. As you can hear, very, very fast, right? There's a couple of things. We're going to have the fast valves. We also need to have good intervals, right? So intervals. There's a couple of awkward intervals in this. If you're just joining us, this is one of the pieces that will be featured on my recital this time next week. So come and check it out. Subscribe to the channel so that you get a notification, so that you don't have to remember. It'll just come up on your phone. If you subscribe on your phone, you got YouTube on your phone. So there's a couple of ways that I like to practice this. Now, the first way is obviously you need to play it slowly. But if you look at the notes with the accents, right, this is where we're going to start. We're going to slow down, but look at the notes with the accents. This is the main theme. If you go back to the start into the theme, you'll actually see on this arrangement it's bar 71, as it's marked. This is the Donald Hunsberger arrangement that Wynton Marsalis recorded with the Eastman Wind Ensemble. If you haven't checked that out, that's a phenomenal recording. Go and check that out. And you'll actually see that the main tune is actually highlighted here with the accents. So I'm just going to play the accented notes first. So the first step that we need to do here is we need to make sure that we can get those notes accurate, consistent with our pitch, right, and good sound. So if we make sure that we get that first, and that's sounding really good first, that's our first step, right? So have another listen. You can hear there was a couple of notes that weren't perfect with the intonation, so I'm going to go fix them. Now make sure you don't reach up for the G. The G is just a placed note that's further forwards, right? So make sure that you don't reaching up for the G atop the stave, because that'll cause you to split and then you'll make other mistakes. Right, so I'm breaking down, that's the first section here done. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the next section. So that's the two sections done. And I practice these independently, usually because it's a little bit harder for me to do one of the sections than the other. So I practice them independently and then I join them all together. That's the first step. So I've got that sounding good. I've got those intervals and those accented notes. Sorry, I've got the accented notes sounding good. The intonation's good, the sound's good, the articulation's good, right? So you've got to make sure that we have those things working well. Now the next step that I'm going to go into is I'm going to play the one note after the accented notes, right? So it'll be the first of the really fast section that I'm slurring. And this will sound like this. So you can hear there I'm practicing getting that interval and that jump, right? Let's do that again. Now try to keep the bottom note long, because if you keep that long, you're then practicing the airstream that you need for the fancy bits, right? Now, that is essentially the main tune done. All right. If you're just joining me, come and say hello in the chat. I've got the chat open so I can see your comments. And whatever time this is, this time next week, I will be performing this piece as part of a live streamed recital. So make sure you subscribe and tick the bell notification so that you can come back for next week's recital. So whatever time it is right now next week, this is when I'll be performing. So come and check that out. All right, back onto the piece. So now I've got the interval working and I've got the airflow working. I've got that in the first section. I'm going to do that same thing in the second section. Same again, I want to get that section sounding really good and getting the vowels moving quickly there. Now I'm going to back off the tempo a little bit because I've now got the main tune notes sounding good. I've got the intonation good, the sound good, the articulation good, and I've got the interval working nicely. Now I need to start getting the air and the vowels working for the undernotes, right? The slowed passage. This is the decoration, as I call it. Now, one thing you notice that I'm doing here, I'm actually playing my accented notes quite long, right? They're not really long, but they're definitely not short. Quite often when I hear people attempting this piece, they play the accented notes way too short, which clips off the airstream, which means they then don't get either in time and they can't get the fast valve movement in the decoration moving, right? So make sure you play the notes a little bit longer instead of shorter. That really helps. Now I've just done that first section. Now that's slow, but I'm going to gradually build up the speed, and I'm just going to practice this section. I'm going to loop it a few times, and I'm going to gradually build up the speed so that I can get it to the desired tempo. Now, this isn't going to happen today, for argument's sake, right? It's not going to happen the first day you practice this. So practice it really, really slowly, and just be focused on being accurate with everything, and increase a little bit today, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And then when you come back for tomorrow's practice session, go back to the starting tempo and build it up again, right? It's gonna take time for this to get up to a really fast tempo like I've done here. So, I'll give you a demonstration. And again. Obviously I've done that, I've worked that up over time, but that's where I get that to, right? And I've increased the speed, I've now got the main tune and the decoration. Now, as we practiced beginning, right, we practiced just the main tune. It's really important that we make sure that that main tune is heard and is distinguished between the decoration. So I actually want to hear in these theme and variation solos, I actually want to hear the theme every time we have a variation. So if I can't hear the theme, then I'm not doing something right. Now, as you can hear with what I've just demonstrated, you can quite clearly hear the main theme over the decoration. Now I'm playing the theme a little bit stronger with the accented notes than I'm playing the decoration. The decoration's a little bit softer. All right. Thanks very much. So now I'm going to go and do that with the second part of this section, of this variation, right? Now this one's a little bit more challenging. It's a little bit more of a challenging key for me. So I'm going to go back and do it a bit slower, and I'll work this one up as well. Now, as I said, I don't go straight from the slower tempo through to that faster tempo. There are many, many, many stages all the way through, and this takes me a lot of time. Usually when I'm practicing this piece, I will usually take at least 2 months, sometimes 3, for me to work this back up to where I want it to be, because it is a technically demanding piece. Now, the first time I learned this piece, it took me quite a while. It did take me quite a while. It took me every single day just practicing this piece for the 3 months before I could actually get it sounding where I wanted it to. Now, since then, it takes me a little bit less time, but I still like to prepare it as part of a program over at least a 2-month period. It just means I'm not stressed when I prepare it. And usually these days, as a performing musician and a teaching musician, I don't necessarily get one piece to practice for the whole time. So I'm normally preparing quite a lot of shows at the same time. So it doesn't necessarily get practiced every single day for the 2 months, but I still work on it for that amount of time. Now, I'm going to piece all of this together, and I'm going to demonstrate it all together slowly, and then I'll increase the speed, and then I'm going to give you one last tip to show you how I'm actually making it easier for myself. And if you're enjoying this, make sure you come back next week this time. So it's 11 o'clock Sydney time. I think it's 7 p.m. US Central time, I think it is. So come back this time next week, and you actually get to check out the live performance of how this is actually going to go. So come and check it out. Live stream performance. I've called it a duet for 2 cats. I'm teaming up with my good friend Gareth on trombone, and we're playing some really, really cool music. And one of them is going to be a brand new commissioned work by Australian composer Christopher Healy. He actually only finished it like 2 days ago, so we've been working on that project. It's a really, really fantastic piece. So come and check that out this time next week. Right, let's get into this. Variation number 2. Now stick around, I've got one more tip for you to make it easier. So still a little bit more work to be done, which is cool, right? I'm still a week out, but some really good preparation in there. A few really good tips here for helping you and how to practice it. Let me know if you guys have got this. If you don't, I can put a link in the description for you so you can go and get the piece. It's called Grand Russian Fantasia. If you're just joining us now, come and check out the live stream concert next week, right? It's just going to be on live stream, right? I'm teaming up with my good friend Gareth Lewis on trombone. So come back this time next week, right? So it's going to be on this time next week. Come and check it out. It'll be live streamed on YouTube. Just can't make it easier to play than the trumpet. Funnily enough, not really. I have performed this on trumpet. I can get my trumpet out and do it if you want. I will. Let me get my trumpet out. It's over here. Now, it doesn't really make a big difference whether I play it on trumpet or cornet. But because I grew up as a cornet player, that is why I end up playing this on cornet, because I grew up as a cornet player and I really love the sound of the cornet. So that's why I usually play the cornet for these theme and variation solos. I mean, that like Arben was the main guy who started the theme and variation thing. He kind of copied Paganini in that sense. And he was a cornet player. So that's why I kind of stick to the cornet, a little bit traditional with that. But yeah, I can do it on trumpet as well. So, you can hear I haven't warmed up this trumpet yet today. I haven't played this one today yet. So the valves are yet to be oiled. I haven't warmed it up. Not used to the blow through on it today. Yeah, that's one thing that I find really important, to get sure that be sure I'm used to the blow through, but to answer your question, I don't find it necessarily easier to play on the cornet. It's the same instrument, basically. The difference is sound concept. Yeah, that's the difference between playing a trumpet and a cornet, right? If you have the right sound concept, then when you jump onto the cornet, then that's the difference between the two. It's not like playing B-flat trumpet and piccolo trumpet, where you do have to change air streams and a few things like that, but I don't like to get into that here. Now, there's one last step that I put into this piece, which I find really, really useful and really, really helpful. Now, I use dynamics to make this easier. Right? Now, dynamics do very much make this easier. Now, I mentioned before that I'm accenting the main tune. Right? Now, the accents are definitely there. But one thing that I usually do is I use the dynamics to help with the phrasing, and by playing with good phrasing makes the piece easier to play, especially here. Okay, this is just a general rule. Like if you go and watch any of the master classes with Håkan Hardenberger on YouTube, a lot of the time he fixes a lot of people's technical issues with phrasing. You know, it's really, really impressive to watch. So go and check out some of his stuff, and he'll actually talk about phrasing first with people, and it actually fixes their technical flaws as well. So it's not always a technical flaw that prevents us from being good at a piece, but quite often it is. But in this case, my last tip, once I've got this working to here, is using phrasing. Now, in this arrangement, bar 123 through to 131, I like to start the section at about a piano, mezzo piano sort of dynamic. So I start soft, and then I gradually, very, very gradually get louder through to the end of the first section, which is bar 130, or measure 130 if you're a friend from the US. Now, it's not big, but you'll actually notice it. Now that I've told you, you'll actually hear it. I'll have a listen. Now, did you actually hear that? Such a simple little concept, but it makes it sound more musical. It also makes it easier to play. So I do that for that first section. I did it both times. You heard when I went back to the start, I dropped the dynamic back, and then I had a gradual crescendo. And then it also turns a theme and variation thing, which is often kind of seen as just technique sort of thing and showing off, then makes it a bit more musical as well. Then I do the same thing in the next section through 131. this week. So that is my tips and tricks on how to work on variation number 2 out of the Grand Russian Fantasia by Jules Levy. Does anyone have any questions before I wrap this one up? Don't forget, I will be live streaming this as part of a recital next week. So this time next week, come back to my YouTube channel, check out what's going on. I will be teaming up with a good friend, Gareth Lewis, on trombone, who's playing some fantastic trombone pieces, some standard repertoire there, some saisons and some grandal. I'm going to be playing this one as part of it. I've got a new commissioned work that got finished 2 days ago. So I'm really excited, looking forward to that one. And we've got a fantastic pianist as well. Her name's Ingrid, and I cannot pronounce her last name to save myself. So I'll have to sort that one out and get that under my tongue as well. I'm going to come back tomorrow, potentially. I'm going to come back maybe tomorrow, probably Friday. I'm going to come back, but keep an eye on this channel. I'm going to come back and talk about another section of this. If you know the piece, the last movement's very much a whole page of triple tonguing. So come back probably Friday for me, 2 days time, and I will run you guys through how I work on the triple tonguing section of this piece. And then over the weekend, so run through the triple tonguing section and show you how, guys, I do that. Thanks for tuning in. If you've got any questions, leave them through the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat while I pack up my studio. But as always, I'm Phill from Australia, and happy practicing.